guys, and welcome to my first video on this channel. So to start off this tutorial, we're going to be using the Ordinary Hyaluronic Acid. This is just a skin prep that I like to use for all of my clients. I'm using a stippling brush to distribute the product all over her skin, and it really just focuses on hydration. Now we're going to be using Vaseline. This is just to hydrate the lips. You can really use anything you want for this step. Now we're going to be using the NYX Brow Pencil in the shade Expresso, and I'm really just filling it in on her sparse areas of her brow. I don't really give it much of a shape because my client already has such a beautiful shape. Now I'm going to be using the Too Faced Born This Way Multi-Use Concealer in the shade Snow, and I'm really just underlining under her brow with a flat brush and then buffing it into her skin. Now I'm going to take the Anastasia Beverly Hills palette. This is a soft glam palette, and I'm going to use the shade Orange Soda. This is going to be the transition shade for this look. It's a really nice orangey color, and I'm just placing it onto her crease. Now I'm going to use the shade Burnt Orange and Sienna, and I'm really just focusing on that outer V, really deepening up that crease. Now I'm going to use the Morphe 35V Stunning Vibes palette, and I'm using this really nude shade, and I'm just packing it onto her eyelid. Now I'm going to be using the NYX Gel Liner and Smudger in the shade Black, and I'll be using a liner brush to really give that precise line for this look. And a tip that I give for everybody is that I just draw like a really horizontal line across her eye so I can just get that perfect liner. Now I'm going to use the SUVA Beauty Hydra Fix eyeliner in the shade Acidtrip. It's this beautiful neon orange shade. It's also glow in the dark, which we'll see later on in this tutorial. And I'm just putting it a little bit above her crease, not too low that when she closes her eyes it doesn't smudge or transfer, but high enough that you can see the liner. Now I'm going to use the Embryolisse Lait-Crème Concentré. This is just a moisturizer for all skin types. I like to use it as a skin prep for all my clients before I go in with any foundation, concealer, any cream products. Now I'm just going to start carving out the top of her brow just to give it more precision. Then I'm going to be using the same buffing brush, and I'm just going to buff in the concealer onto her skin. Now I'm going to be using the Smashbox Photofinish Oil and Shine Control Primer. I'm really focusing it on her pores, all over her face, using the same stippling brush to distribute the product all over her skin. Now I'm going to be taking this Makeupforever Ultra HD palette. I'm going to be using the shade Y365. And I'm just going to be using a big fluffy foundation brush. I wouldn't really say it's fluffy, it's more dense. But this is a very waxy product. It's not really your typical foundation, but I've really been loving it. From the same palette, I'm going to be using the shade Y505, and this is more of a contour shade just to give it more life, just to bring more life onto her skin, really focusing on her forehead, her cheekbones. Now I'm going to be using the same Too Faced Born This Way concealer, except this time it's going to be in the shade Porcelain, and I'm using a flat synthetic brush, and I'm placing it on all of the high points of her face. I really want the light to really catch these places, so I'm placing it under her eyes, under her mouth, on top of the brow bone. Now I'll be taking the Mercier translucent setting powder, and I'm just taking a really small fluffy brush, really packing it onto the skin. Next, I'll be taking the Anastasia Beverly Hills Contour Kit. This is in the shade Light Medium, and I'm just gonna place the yellow powder underneath her eyes to give it a little bit more coverage. Now I'm going to be taking the contour shade, and I'm going to be placing underneath her cheekbones to really give it that lift. And I'll be doing the same thing on the other side. Next, I'm going to be using the Wet n Wild Color Icon Bronzer, and this is in the shade Ticket to Brazil. This is a really nice orangey bronzer. Not too orange, but it does have little specks of glitter. For blush, I'm going to be using Tarte Amazonian Clay Blush. This is in the shade Party, and I really like this taupey type of color for her cheeks. It's a really muted pink, but I still really like it. For highlight, I'll be using the Wet n Wild Megaglo highlighting powder. This is in the shade Golden Flower Crown, and I'm just placing it on top of her cheekbones, on the high points of her face. I really want the light to reflect off of this highlighter. It's a really nice golden undertone, and it really suits her skin tone. And that was pretty much the tutorial. I'm really sorry that I couldn't record the rest of it. My camera died, but please guys, subscribe, come back, and I'm really glad you guys enjoyed it.